took Saunders' place.
Oh, she did? Oh, good for her. I guess that means it's time, yeah? Good morning. I would like to call the September 17th, 2019 Hutchinson City Council meeting to order. Linda, please call the roll.
Deckent?
Here.
Dave Line?
Here.
Soldner?
Here.
Pyros de Carvalho?
Here.
Yansky. Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have Gary Getting here this morning to do our prayer. Thank you, Gary.
You're very welcome. Shall we pray? Well, gracious Heavenly Father, we give thanks for this day that you've given to us. Thank you for this community in which we live and those who serve us in various ways throughout our community. Thank you for another successful Kansas State Fair. And we pray for wisdom and discernment as you guide and direct the discussions and the decisions that take place in these chambers today. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Next item, please.
Item 4A, report on townhomes at Santa Fe Place.
Morning, Shara.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shara Gonzalez, the President CEO of New Beginnings, Inc. I wanted to just kind of bring you up to date on where we were with the project of townhomes at Santa Fe Place. It was a moderate income housing grant that the city received. It was also part of the neighborhood stabilization funds that were received. It was done in two parts. And the question was, could we actually, meaning us as a city, redevelop, take moderate income housing and put it in the downtown area for a workforce that was determined to be young professionals, a place to land, so to speak, for people coming to town to take employment here. So that was the goal. There was a lot of speculation as to whether or not it could happen. It would work. And so now we're several years down the road, but this is the report I wanted to give you, and that is, if you look at first the age range in which the people who have lived there in the last few years, 0 to 18 means 12. That's children for the most part that have lived in that project. 19 to 25, 12, 26 to 35, 3, 36 to 45, 3, and over 45, 3. So again, it looks like we hit our target in terms of young professionals with children. Then if we look at places of employment, I'm not going to go through the whole list here for everybody unless I need to, but it's like there's folks from the correctional facility, from Dillon's Stores, Dillon's Pharmacy, there's Kroger Accounting, Tyson's. All of these positions, though, were positions of professionalism, even with the, or trades. Even with the Tyson, that's the lead person for their heating and air conditioning there. If you look over at from out of town, 58% were from out of town. So they did come here. They did land in Hutchinson. In an example, one of the first townhomes that we had, a young woman came to town to be an assistant manager for the 5th Street Dillon store right across the street. And she lived there for about a year, and then she moved on, bought a house on into Hutchinson, which is exactly what we had hoped would happen. If we look then, clear down, area median income. Affordable housing runs up to 60%, generally from 30 to 60% of area median income. Moderate income goes from 80 to 150%. And which is, there's a gap in there. I've always wondered what's the difference between 60 and 80. What do we call that? But nonetheless, this moderate income then should have been between 80 and 150%. And if you notice, we hit the target For the most part, the 4 that are at the 70 to 80%, that in-between area, was during development when we did development of the second phase. After the first phase, that's the discount kind of that we gave people who would live there while we were doing major construction. That was 3 of them. The other one was a single individual who didn't meet the income qualifications, who then had someone move in and did meet the income qualifications. Recently, our Lieutenant Governor Lynn Rogers came through to take a look at various projects with the Community Foundation, and took a look at this project and decided that it was a case study for the state on how to do moderate income housing. And especially because it's a public-private partnership. The Hutchinson Community Foundation, well, let me back up and say the partners in all of this was you all, the city. You donated the land and provided some funds. The state provided the moderate income funds. The Community Foundation provided a low-interest loan, which made all the difference. That's how we were able to actually finally make it work financially. And it was local citizens investing in a redevelopment area. I don't know if all of you remember what that area looked like prior to this, but it was really bad. So that, and we just wanted to say thank you for working with us, and also to say we're glad that we can be part of your CDBG application for the Creekside neighborhood, because it's kind of between the Santa Fe townhomes and our Hutchinson lofts that we redeveloped some years ago. So it's a good project, and it looks like the state's looking at it as a model. Thanks.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Shara. It's really incredible what you've done. My husband and I took some time around that area this weekend, and he just marveled at it. And I marveled at it too, because I remember your original vision, but without your persistence and stick-to-itiveness and bobbing and weaving and finding new ways to make it happen, I just question whether it would have ever come to fruition. So I really applaud your hard work, and it was really the beginning of the transformation of that entire block. I mean, you look at what Egbert's has done at the end of the block, and then is it the sewing place, or there's...
Yeah, the Nelson Heating and Air redid their building.
Yeah, it's
Mark
just incredible.
Vorsky has bought up some properties around there and redeveloped. That's what happens in a redevelopment area.
It worked exactly as you envisioned it, and I just thank you for your vision and all of the time and investment you put into that area.
Sure.
Sure. What's your occupancy rate?
On
Are you full now?
We're full. We have a waiting list. We
Great.
constantly have people asking us for more. We can do more. So it's a model of what we of infill, I think, too, because it's a pocket neighborhood. Rather than trying to put one house in a lot, it was combining some lots together and creating a pocket neighborhood for infill that can bring it all up. I think the single, it's really difficult. It's great when it happens, but it's really difficult to do single redevelopment and expect that around it is going to change a lot. So, and this in the Creekside area, you know, we had a disaster happen about a year ago where we lost our roof over on 100 East 2nd, our main building. So we moved all of our administrative offices over to 6th and Adams there. And so now we are part of the Creekside neighborhood. So we'll continue to work on it.
Great.
Did you get a sense from the Lieutenant Governor as to whether more funds will be allocated to the moderate income housing program?
Yes, I think so. And this is a little bit different than workforce housing elsewhere, where it's been for smaller communities that needed housing for manufacturing to come in. So that was a hard sell kind of to the state, but again, we've proved that was exactly what who we are in terms of a need for workforce. I think yes is the answer, and I've already had contacts from other communities looking to see how we put that together as the case study. So,
Fantastic.
well,
Very
thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. very much.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 4B, oral communications from the audience.
This is the part of the meeting where we allow anyone in the audience to address the council on a topic that is not on the agenda. We ask that you please state your name and address and keep your remarks to 5 minutes. Do we have anybody who would like to speak today? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Next item, please.
Item 5, consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes, next item, please.
Item 6A, public hearing to consider 50th Avenue right-of-way vacation.
Motion to open public hearing?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Good morning. Jeff Peterson, Director of Engineering. The city had received a vacation petition from Daniel Lane and Steve Gladow to vacate the existing 40-foot platted 50th Avenue right-of-way located north of their properties. At present, that 50th Avenue is undeveloped, and it is the north line of the city limits also. So we had, and we'll have the map come up. We did the required notification according to state statute, as well as solicited comments from utilities that would be interested in this area. What we found was the city, of course, wanted a 20-foot utility easement, which we retained, and that still served the purposes of Mr. Lane. Just last week, that's why you've got additional information. Right after I got the council memo done, we received some comments from AT&T, and they wanted to, there's a utility easement that goes behind the lots along Sequoia Street, and they just wanted, if you look at the right side of the exhibit that we showed there, to retain that 20 by 20 foot utility easement so it connects with the other one. So if they needed to expand up north, or other utilities would expand up north, that would be at the connection instead of a space in between where the utilities would be located. With that, granting that portion, AT&T and all the other people that, utilities that, including the city departments, did approve of this vacation. So at present, we don't have plans on expanding or developing 50th Avenue, since it's the north end of the city limits, and there's some large lots and properties and houses up north of there. So anyway, due to just the comments we've had at approving it, I would recommend that we grant the vacation of East 50th Avenue, just based on the comments and the approvals we've had. So if you have questions, let me know. And Daniel Lane is also in the audience if you have questions for him concerning this.
So Jeff, the 20 feet wouldn't allow for a street to be put in, am I correct?
Correct. But we did retain a utility easement, so we could keep utilities in there if needed. There's not water in this area, so if water ever needed and we needed to loop it in, that would give that opportunity, or other utilities to come in and loop in also.
So if, probably quite a ways in the future, the city were to develop beyond 50th Street, and would we be able to put a street in?
Well, there's a potential of that. The developer, I mean, if someone would develop north of there, the street could be
Move north?
North of that.
Okay, so it would be
So-
part of the platting of
Correct.
of a new area. Okay.
So that would be an option at that point. So.
Okay.
But that's good. Yeah, that is a good question.
There's actually a building going in just north of that
Is there?
right now, Richardson's.
Oh, their shop.
They bought
Yeah,
part
and
of Dan
then-
Garber's.
And then, yeah, there's been, in the last few years, there's been residential development north of there too.
But those properties are accessed from
Through Sequoia Street.
Oh, through Sequoia.
Up,
Oh,
Up
okay.
north, so.
Okay. So Sequoia will or does continue
Well,
north from.
it doesn't, city-wise it does, and it's just a driveway past there.
Okay.
North. It's not a street.
But that's
at
the
all.
access point,
Correct.
basically, for those residences and business.
Some of those. And then there's residences that are onto the east of there that
Mhm.
access through a private drive all the way through the north. So
Okay.
it's kind of surrounded by residences for the most part.
So we'd be vacating,
40 feet is all.
right.
40 foot wide and retaining a 20-foot utility.
But it'd be for that whole distance from Sequoia to whatever that,
Sequoia to Pin Oak.
Pin
Road.
Oak,
Correct.
except for that 20 by 20 box.
Correct. Yep. Those are all retained utility easements.
Are there comments from the council? Anybody in the audience? This is a public hearing. Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes. Is there a motion on this item or further
I would
discussion?
move, and I guess we have some new language here.
Yep.
The new motion will be a motion to approve the order vacating street right-of-way and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 7A, consider resolution of intent for refunding IRBs on behalf of healthcare facilities.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. Council, you have before you a resolution determining the intent for refunding IRBs on behalf of Wesley Towers, Inc. It is a refunding and refinancing mechanism not to exceed $4.5 million. There is no obligation of the city. This is not new. We have done these a number of times for Wesley Towers. It allows them to take advantage of lower interest rates that are beneficial to them, and we would recommend that you approve that. Upon approval, there will be a notice setting a date for the council to approve an ordinance to authorize the issuance of the bonds.
So this is just a continuation of
Yeah.
what we've been and have done in the past.
It is.
Nothing new and different.
Any discussion or a motion?
I move to approve motion to approve resolution of the governing body of the city of Hutchinson, Kansas, determining the intent to issue a healthcare facilities refunding revenue bonds of said city in one or more series for the purpose of refining and refunding certain outstanding revenue bonds issued by the city, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Jay,
Deck,
hold on just a second. Are you with, yeah, I just wanted to make sure, I know you
Yeah.
probably don't need to say anything, but if you want to introduce yourself real quick, just representing that way.
Yeah.
You came all this way, you need to.
You at least need to stand up.
It's not that far. I'm Kevin Cowan with the law firm of Gilmore and Bell.
Yeah.
We've represented the city as bond counsel on the Wesley Tower issues, and that would be the plan in the future. And the city attorney did a wonderful job on the resolution. But I am here if you have any questions of me.
Thank you, Kevin. Sorry, Mayor.
No, it's fine. Any questions for Kevin? Well, we do thank you for being present today.
You need to speak up. Don't let us ignore you.
Yeah,
I know we're on a roll. You're going to let me run the meetings more often. huh?
yeah.
Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8A, consider appeal of the Landmarks Commission decision regarding 522 East First Avenue.
Good morning, City Council. Aaron Barlow, Associate Planner. I have before you today a request by the Inspections Department to appeal a decision by the Landmarks Commission to grant a demolition permit for the property located at 522 East First Avenue. This is a pretty standard process that you probably see more of. The property at 522 East First Avenue is under IPMC code violation. So here's just, I'll move on. So it's in the Eastern Whiteside District. It's 1905, it built in 1905, and it's a contributing structure, meaning it doesn't have any non-historic materials on it. Contributing and non-contributing doesn't mean good or bad. It just means what type of materials are on there. There's a historic description of it. It's got gable roofs, and it's got a couple porches on there not a lot of strong historic features other than the architecture and the location of it. Here's the property in question. As you can see, the property is in disrepair. This was a IPMC code violation that has been in court since March of this year. Our code enforcement officer, John Vetter, has been working with the property owner, Sebastian Cadillo, who lives next door at 518 East First Avenue. Yep, 518 East First Avenue. He does not have the means to do the needed repairs on the property to bring it up to our property code requirements. This will probably be a common occurrence in the near future. Prior to changing the IPMC code to, before we used to have a complaint-only basis, if you remember, and it was changed to allowing the code enforcement officer to actually cite people from a curbside inspection. Since then, a lot of homes that have been in need of repair but have kind of flown under the radar are now in the docket for demolition, or maybe not demolition, but they're in the court process. And a lot of these property owners do not have the means to upgrade these properties. And I think Trent and John are here, can answer any questions about that process, but I'm here to talk about the appeal and the historic preservation process. So these are just some photos of the property in question. And if you'd like me to slow down, I can. I got some more recent photos here than what's in the packet. The property owner was beginning to put in that porch, but that is the extent of the improvements that he has done. These are the older photos. Okay, so just based on this analysis, the Landmarks Commission determined that this would damage or destroy the historic resource. Obviously, demolishing does that, but the City Council is able to grant an appeal based on whether or not there are any feasible or prudent alternatives based on 4 factors: the technical issues for construction, any design issues, meaning what information is available to bring that property to a historic state, relationship to our community-wide plan, any plans we have relating to demolitions or preservation, and then any economic issues, meaning how much it's going to cost repair versus how much the property owner has and the value of the property. And that's something that the Landmarks Commission cannot consider. They're strictly limited to historic issues, the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, which are all design related. So as far as technical issues, since the house is in a state of serious disrepair, there's extensive work relating to the windows and doors and the foundation. The municipal court judge, Tad Dower, ordered that he either fix it or the property come down. And Mr. Cadillo hasn't really provided any evidence that he has the means to meet all the technical issues required to bring this property up to standards. Design issues. There's not a lot of information available for a lot of these homes on First Avenue. A lot of them are workforce houses. There's homes on Sherman in the Houston Whiteside district that have a lot of history connected to them, but there are homes in the district that are just simply old. They might have been Sears homes or other similar type mass-produced properties that don't have a lot of, other than being built during that time period, we don't have a lot of information about them. And trying to find that info, you can go to the library, you can go to find old photos, but there's not as much information because it wasn't always in the news, it wasn't recorded in the same way Houston Whiteside's home was, or those homes on Sherman Avenue were. However, removing the home from the district does impact the rhythm of the neighborhood. You can start to have that missing teeth look. And it's already starting to be a problem in many parts of the community, and it will continue if homes are continued to be demolished. But it's a question of, do we want the blighted properties or do we want the vacant lots? community-wide plan relationship. In the comprehensive plan, strategy 2.1A1 tells us to develop a targeted demolition plan to maximize reuse of properties. Additionally, Trent Maxwell brings to you blighted properties, and that's kind of been a goal of the city, is to manage blighted properties within the community. And there really isn't that there's no prudent alternative to demolishing. And finally, economic issues. As I've talked about, Sebastian Cadillo does not have the means to demolish that or to bring the property up to standards. So he has signed that property over to the city. And so really, in order for it to be demolished, the city council is the only body that can grant that when it's a historic structure. So that's my report. I'm happy to answer any questions at this point.
Questions from the council?
Well, it saddens and pains me. I think that there is no reasonable, or I guess the words are feasible and prudent alternative, but that's a block from my house. And I do live on Sherman, so I'm fortunate there in terms of a street that's generally better upkept, but it is sad and pains. I want to talk about, I have several questions. I want to talk about several things. The exhibit 4, the Kansas Historic Resources Inventory.
Mm-hmm.
At the bottom of that, I think it's a 2-page or a 1-page. But anyway, there are 3 pictures. So the current property's appearance,
Mm-hmm.
something, I'm not sure how many years ago, where it was obviously deteriorating in terms of its paint.
Might have been about
And then an early
2008.
picture. Any idea when that early picture was taken?
That was during a survey, that original survey of many of the historic properties in the community about between 1984 and 1988.
20, 30 years ago,
Yeah.
at least. There was a survey done by the Landmarks Commission more recently,
About
in the
2016.
last 2 or 3 years. Is that where that
Yeah, that most
center
recent
picture?
and even the one here, I pulled that from that website.
Okay,
This one here is from Joe Higgins. She lives down the street from you
Right,
in the commission.
right.
On the commission, she went through the whole neighborhood and took pictures of
Mhm,
every property. And so this is one of her photos.
Gesundheit.
Pardon me.
Aaron, there was a question asked at the Landmarks Commission hearing on this
Mhm.
by one of the Landmarks commissioners, and the question was essentially the impact removal of this home, or where things stand in terms of the historical designation of the neighborhood and the number of properties out of the total.
Yes.
Can you answer that question now that you didn't have the information then?
I have not done that math, I'm sorry, but we were at about 50%. And about 58%, I think, was 58, 53. It has gone down.
Mm-hmm.
Despite our best efforts in education and outreach. Part of it, the issue is, now that we have the IPMC enforcement actively out there looking at these homes, many of these homes have just flown under the radar and likely should have been taken care of 10, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so to bring these up to a livable standard will take a considerable amount of investment that many of these property owners do not have. We have the property next door will probably come to you in November, 524 East First.
I'd written that down and wanted to ask Trent about that, but you can, okay.
She bought the property for $1, was going to fix it up, but the amount of investment that's required to bring it up to the just livable standard, not historic standards, was well beyond the value of the home and money that she had.
Mm-hmm.
So
La-
I guess to answer your question, I don't have an exact number,
Okay.
but I'll get that for the Landmarks Commission. I can get a report to you
I'd
shortly.
be interested in knowing about that. Last time, let's see, I forget the exact issue. It wasn't it wasn't a demolition, as I recall. Well, maybe it was. But anyhow, last time we had an issue in the historic neighborhood, I talked about the Landmarks Commission, and Ryan, I might address this to you as certainly becoming proactive in terms of, and maybe working with the inspections department when there are properties before they get to the point where as a city we're going to be seeking to demolish a property, just or I mean, we can see that the extent of IPMC violations are tremendous and costly, et cetera. But before getting there, to have some impact. And I don't know that I did last time, but I'd like to officially request, if it doesn't violate or can be within the charter, the course of what the Landmarks Commission does, but that there be some proactiveness, that rather than are dealing with it at this point, that there's some entity that's, oh, I know what, it was the sugar mill.
Yeah.
Where I made those same comments, that we're doing something proactively and not just sitting and waiting and watching as pieces fall off of a building finally to the point where there's got to be city action for the good of the city. I mean, we've got a historic neighborhood, and it's certainly larger than one block, and 50 years or 75 years from now, I think as today we rue the destruction of the, I've just had a senior moment, the hotel that was such a beautiful hotel, the Harvey House Hotel. I'm sorry.
Basanti.
The Basanti.
Thank you, the Basanti.
Santi. Mm-hmm.
You know, we're going to, now this may not be a you know, shining example of a house in the area, but it was still part of that area of town. My house is only 2 years older than that house. I think as a city and a community that we're failing to protect, in a proactive sense, our history. And we just talked with Shara, you know, and that's a great development, but that's not a development built to last 100 years.
So we have
and these houses, and I say that, but you know, a lot of today's buildings aren't generally built to be able to withstand and be standing at 100 years later. So I'd formally request that Landmark Commission be charged with that, and like I said, whether it's working with inspections or however that might work, so that we're not coming to this point, or at least that we've taken and made some proactive efforts to avoid coming to this point. You know, we see a house sold for $1. Can it really reasonably? I'm pontificating. I recognize that. Bear with me, please. You know, we recognize is there really going to be any good come out of something like that? And I think. So I go back to the first words I uttered. It pains me and saddens me to see us coming to this and taking another house down. Now I realize that contributing is just a matter of this, but also non-contributing siding and windows and those kind of things have to do with the historical designation of the neighborhood. I know that I stand I know I stand. Having an opinion that isn't wholeheartedly agreed upon by everybody, but we need to retain that protection of that part of town, or we'll lose again. We'll see a more rapid deterioration of properties. So, and I had 524. I was going to ask about that, so I'm not surprised. I mean, it's in every much as worse, bad shape, maybe worse. And so I'm not surprised to hear that we're going to be looking at it, and it's probably way too far to think about what I just spoke of the last 5 minutes. Thank you for allowing me the time.
No, I'm curious if that would be something, and maybe Trent, you could have some insight into this, or Ryan, these properties that we're looking at, or properties that haven't reached that point, where does the Landmark Commission come in? Where could they come in?
Okay, guys, yeah.
To Trent Maxwell, building official for the city. A couple clarifications. This one and the one 524 we're discussing are actually complaints. We haven't been proactively yet. Aaron's correct. In the near future, and we see these dilapidated homes, we're going to be proactive in addressing them. But the ones that we've got a long history of complaints on these properties and in
Not
court and so
surprised.
forth. So
Yeah.
that's just a little clarification on that one. But Ryan can probably speak to how the landmarks could be proactive and work with us.
I'll let Aaron speak as he's our main staff person on this. Okay.
We have an action plan, and we are working on a couple seminars. You approved an action plan that we put together, and we've updated the planning commission on that. So we are not sitting quietly while this is happening. We are actively reaching out to the community. We are developing a social media program to, get out and let people know the value of these historic homes. We're going to put together a seminar on window repair coming up. We are going to work on a tax credit seminar as well. The issue is that when a home is at this point, is it really possible to say without an intense investment, which is probably going to take money either through CDBG or through city investment from because the owners of these homes do not have the means to do it. Unless we get an angel investor out of California or something, it's not going to happen.
Well, appreciate your efforts on that. I did have a couple process questions. I know that it's outside of this particular item on the agenda, but I am curious what the process of identifying IPMC violations is. I know that was one concern many in the community had, that we wouldn't be able to implement that IPMC fairly. Are we addressing it block by block? What's your plan there?
Yeah, so currently, as we've been going through, these have been complaint-driven or through our rental program. That's really the only mechanism that we've used the property maintenance code to date. Once we get through the rental program side of it, trying to get all those rentals inspected, we're still dealing with complaints all the time. The 524 is a complaint-driven one as well. Future we'll probably address the worst of the worst, what we see that we just can't ignore. That would be our action moving forward. And then the property maintenance code kind of dictates itself. You write everything that you see that has an issue. And then just like Mr. Cadillo, we've worked with him. John has for many months. It's been in court, gone through that process. I don't know. Aaron's correct. Houses that are this far gone that's a challenge. It's a money pit. You've got to really have the financial means to be able to save it. There's going to be a lot of homes that aren't going to be this bad, that if they replace the siding or maybe do the roof or something, they can save it. So a few $1,000s of investment would be fine. But we have still several, and you're going to see more coming up here in next few weeks that are, to this point. So.
Another question I had is, so Aaron mentioned that it was signed over to the city, so I assume so that he wouldn't bear the cost of demolition, and we have budgeted for that, right? And then does the empty lot go to the land bank at that point? Or
that's up to the owner if he facilitates discussion and donates it to land bank. I'm not sure if that discussion's happened. We usually will let them know that, hey, you retain the property. If you want to donate it, you can talk to the land bank, see if it's one they're interested in. But the release is simply a signed statement from the property owner, notarized, stating that the city can abate the issue however necessary.
I see. Okay.
It's not necessarily ownership.
No, it's never ownership.
So who bears the cost of the demolition?
We do.
We do, city.
But we've budgeted for that.
Yeah, we have.
Okay.
Trent, just off the top of your head, what would it cost to bring this back up? I think sometimes people think it's not nearly as much as it is.
We've had a couple that have been looked at by developers, and this one specifically, no, we haven't. But one was $80,000 that I would say is comparable to this home.
Okay.
Again, that was all hired help, a licensed contractor, so forth. This is not. It would not probably be owner occupied. If it was, then if someone knew and had the capability, then you could maybe do it for $25,000, $30,000. But that's physically doing everything yourself, all the wiring, the plumbing.
Yeah. Okay, I was just curious because I think sometimes people think it's not going to cost as much as it really does. And so,
Yeah, even small home projects, you know, we see additions, remodels all the time. The ongoing theme is it's always costing more than what they expected. They find things that they didn't expect to find, weren't planning on it, didn't budget for it. This would be one of those. I'm sure every corner you turn, you're going to expose something that you weren't prepared for or
well,
planning
yeah,
for.
just looking at the foundation pictures alone,
Yep.
that's pretty telling.
Well, I'm really heartened to hear of Aaron's efforts to be more proactive. So good job on that, and I look forward to seeing what comes out of that. It's a good first step in trying to address this. We're just going to have to figure it out as we go because we've let it go too long to know what the solution is without trying a few things.
A couple other items that we're working on. One, after the total amount of contributing structures falls below 50%, we were able to appeal to the state and the National Park Service to redraw those boundaries for the historic district, which we really think needs to happen. If you look at the shape of the district, it looks kind of like an elephant. There's a trunk sticking out in some places. Another thing we're working on, we're going to apply for a Historic Preservation Fund grant. We've been working with the state to develop mini grants. It won't be a huge investment, but it'll be maybe $1,000, $2,000 for improvements on homes to pay for contractors on the work. You know, it's not going to do the whole project, but it might get them over that last little bit to get some work done, especially on those homes like Trent was saying that just need re-roofing, re-siding, paint, windows, you know, to do the wood windows instead of vinyl windows, which can be a considerable upfront cost, but cheaper long term because they last longer, but upfront it can cost a bit more to replace deteriorated wood windows with wood windows.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, and I would hope that if we get to the point where we draw the lines, we draw a line and then that's where we say, no, this is our historic district and we're not going to waver. Because you're right, Steve, we've allowed it to diminish and diminish and diminish, and pretty soon we're going to have half a block of historic homes. So,
I'm glad to hear those things, Aaron. Likewise, very glad. Maybe to Trent, maybe someone else. Going back to the process, I don't know how long the current property owner has owned that property. But I'm chafing a little bit that we're relieving the property owner of any cost to taking care of the property that he's had at least some part in allowing to come to this point. When I first started Aaron, I thought, well, at least we end up with the lot, but we don't. The property owner is going to maintain ownership of that lot.
Along with the cost of the abatement.
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
we
I'm
do
sorry.
assess.
He's not going to pay it, but it does apply to the, I mean, it's.
Right,
Oh,
it goes on
okay.
to the taxes.
Goes on to
So,
the tax
okay,
rolls.
so it is going to be attached to the property
Correct.
as a, okay.
And
We
there's
pay
been
for the
there's been a
work.
handful that
We pay for it, but it's going to be attached to the
He won't.
property.
Yeah.
So
Or
he either
like-
pays for it or the next owner pays for it, or if it
Or we
were,
waive it and-
or
Waive
or
if
the
he
land bank.
donates it to
if the land bank takes ownership, it would probably be
Right.
waived, which I'd be okay with, because then we've got a body that's got the best interest of that. Okay, so he doesn't pay it up front, but he'd be responsible for it at least until such time as he donates the property to somebody. Okay.
you know, I do think people who own these properties have the, best of intentions. So I would hate to imply that they don't. So I think it really just is a matter of life getting in the way and finances getting in the way. So
He was, just to speak on his behalf, because I've talked to a lot of people, and some people don't care, they've obtained it. I felt like he cared because he really loves that neighborhood. He talked about the negative things that happened within the neighborhood, and he is constantly trying to safeguard that house from some of those issues that he finds. So I think the house coming down is actually going to be a relief for him, because he does live next door, and he does love that part of town. So if he had the
Good.
money, I don't think it would be an issue. I think he's kind of surrendered to the fact that he will never be able to do anything with the property.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I
Thank
mean,
you.
I think people get into some of these properties and just don't realize what it's going to take. to do it. And I'm with you, Jade. I think they have the best intentions, but it's just overwhelming when it comes down to the bottom line. So, for sure. Are you ready for a motion?
Yeah, to either grant the appeal or uphold.
Could I?
Sure.
When you begin being more proactive with the property maintenance code, that's going to fall not solely, but almost entirely in the south part of town, in Nancy's district and mine.
True.
And I kind of broadened what I was saying about a historic area. Having a vacant lot versus a property like that is better, but having vacant lots within a neighborhood is not a good thing. So I'd ask in some fashion to try to intercede rather than just simply reacting to something, being the worst of the worst. If I don't know how to do it, but again, my point being, if we can somehow get folks connected with some resources or some education, as Aaron referred to, or whatever, to try to avoid having to demolish the structure in the first place. That would be different from what inspections is not out to, inspections inspects to make sure codes are maintained, but it seems to me it would be of benefit to our city if somehow your department or your department with somebody else or whatever could again be proactive and save structures rather than simply pulling them down. And then we have the open lot, and as Shara spoke to well, it's expensive and almost prohibitive in most cases to be able to put a single-family dwelling back. I guess if we tear down enough in the same place, then we could look at a chunk of property that could be developed maybe more reasonably, but that it doesn't always happen so neatly as to have 4 or 5 in a row.
It does seem like there might be an opportunity to work more with our community development or neighborhood development official in that capacity, because I do think your department is spread pretty thin as it is, especially in trying to get all the rentals. That's really been our priority. So I think that's a great idea. I do think that we're looking at a whole nother person. But I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that, Trent.
Well, there's 2 parts. Part of what we're dealing with are those houses that have been sold on a land contract that people just want to buy it. The dollar example, you know what you're going to get for that amount of money you're spending. I received a call, I think it was Friday, a gentleman not from Hutchinson but owns a property here, and he was so grateful that we sent him a notice. He said, you know what, I needed to look at my property, and you guys did that. You told me basically what I needed to do, and I appreciate it. I'm going to fix it. I'll get it taken care of, and thanks again for bringing it to my awareness. So there's some of that probably happens that we don't hear a whole lot about because it's easier more just to remain silent or just to complain. As far as the education piece, it's I don't know, this is like the perfect issue of how to solve. We're trying to solve housing issues, and you've got dilapidated homes that might be past their lifetime, and no one has the halo donor that wants to do that. And so how do we, you can only send so many people to interfaith housing and New Beginnings and find probably a dead end or limited funds to help them in their situation. I don't have an answer. We can look at it. I think Housing Commission would be probably a good group to discuss plans or programs to be proactive about it. I don't know.
I think you're probably right. And what I'd ask is that rather than after today, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Keep it there, and I don't know what the answer is. There probably isn't the answer, but I mean, just keep it there and in thoughts and conversation. And Housing Commission, I think, would be an appropriate area to be heavily involved in that. So,
will do.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Nancy.
Yeah. Now. Okay, I will move to grant the appeal of the Landmarks Commission determination and authorize the issuance of a demolition permit for 522 East First Avenue based upon a finding that there is no feasible or prudent alternative to the project.
Second.
Further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8B, consider arterial overlay change order.
Good morning again. Jeff Peterson, Director of Engineering. This discussion concerns change order 2, which is the final change order for this project for $185,136.26. The change order reflects a final construction cost for the project of $1,355,314.74. Since this change order represents more than a 10% increase, according to the city's purchasing manual, it does require a formal approval by the city council. So this overrun this year was due to the condition of the base or the foundation of primarily 23rd Avenue from Waldron to Halsted. Once we started the milling operations, we kind of got into it, and then the milling machine occasionally would kind of settle in and rut up portions of the street. We did adjust the milling operation as we went and tried to mill a little bit thinner, but it still kept happening. So with that, as we kind of went through the project, we ended up usually we try to keep two-way traffic on streets during the whole construction project. This time we couldn't. We shut it down to just one-way traffic and milled the one side, did the repairs, then switched them over, milled the other side, and did the repairs. So some of the costs and as much of repairs we needed to do, it was just something we needed to do to keep this moving, because it was kind of in a time period, if we let traffic on it, it would have went farther south, I guess. So the change order was what we needed, and like I said, this change order does reflect all the final costs for the project. So I do say that the overrun comes from the Arterial Street Reserve Fund, and we do have adequate funds to cover that. So with that, do you guys have any questions?
Jeff, an engineering question. As you get into the engineering and design of the project here, could there have been steps and measures taken to identify these issues prior to the letting of the contract and the scope?
I would say minimal, because sometimes we don't really know what's underneath till we start the milling process.
Really?
Many of our streets have like a brick base or those types of things under it. This one was problematic, so it was kind of on the edge of either doing that or doing a total reconstruct. So we kind of have to balance those, and we don't always get it just perfect, but we try to get it as close as we can. We did have some costs in for those full depth repairs, but in this case we didn't have enough.
Do you know whether or not originally that was built to city standards, or was that a county?
That would have been a city.
It would have been city. Okay.
There had to be.
Well done.
There had to be that street is not that old. I don't remember how old it is, but it's been in bad shape.
It's
for
problematic.
10, 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I have been driving that street with great regularity, and believe me, it's much better now than
it's
it was.
better, but there's still some. It's
There's
still a
still some
little
kind of
There's some
ripply,
way.
and when we have base base failures and things like that, we do typically relieve the contractor for some of the smoothness things on that, because it's not a function of what they're doing, or the actual construction that they're doing, but it is. We try to keep it as good as we can, as long as we can, and minimize the costs over the long term. But
we did have some full depth repairs identified in the original project.
But those
Just
full
nothing
depth
to this
repairs are for
degree.
all the streets that we're working. They're not aggregated to a particular street per se. So
Just put in as you expect to run into some full depth
every
repair
few years
work.
we might run into a street like that. I'm not saying typically we run pretty close to what the bids are, or the final project's costs are. But this year we did not. So
It almost sounds like this we're going to be talking about 23rd again in the not too distant future, because there's
potentially
probably
we did quite a few repairs. We did also some curb and gutter repairs, which is paid for separately through the stormwater side of things, and those types of things. So some of the problems were that water would pond on the sides of the curb and gutter were tilted, so actually water would pond on the street instead of going through the curb and gutter. So there's some problematic things that had happened over time too, so.
So this isn't necessarily a function of the contractor not considering a big enough contingency, or this was definitely on the city?
Correct.
Okay.
How much is normally taken off in a routine mill?
Well, we do quite a few different ones. A lot of times it's 2-inch, but we've done 2.5-inch, and we've done inch or 1.5 ones too. So it varies, kind of depending on what we think the surfacing, what condition it is at the time. So that's kind
And what was being done on this street?
We were originally going to do 2.5, and this was we did refer to our IMS things, and they said it needed 2 to 2.5 inches taken off. But as we got into it, they don't always know that the base is quite that bad either. So
Yeah, according to this, it was 2-inch.
yeah.
You said the 185 came out of arterial reserves?
Correct.
So that doesn't impact any other streets we planned to do?
It doesn't. It does continue to take our reserves
Yeah,
down.
dwindle
going
that
forward,
down, which is unfortunate.
Which is kind of what's happening over the long term anyway. But it's the actual budget for this total project was $1,300,000. So, well, no, $1,350,000. I'm sorry, and we came in at $1,355,000 overall. Typically, we're below that.
Engineering estimate?
Well,
or
below the budget too, the CIP budget too.
Yeah. So overall, we're only about 5,000 over that original budget?
Correct.
Okay. That makes me feel a little better. That's a very excessive change order.
Yes, it is.
But the complexities of these construction projects and the dynamic nature, I recognize.
It's a
when they
moving
happen.
target somewhat as we're doing the project.
Well, I would move to approve change order number 2 in the amount of $185,136.26 with Cornell and Sons LLC.
Second.
Further discussion? If no, please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8C, consider amendment to contract for intermediate pump station at the wastewater treatment facility.
Good morning. My name is Brian Clinton. I'm the Director of Public Works. The preliminary design has been completed, and the construction costs have been developed for Phase 3 of the intermediate pump station out at the wastewater treatment facility. This project replaces the 3 screw pumps with 3 submersible pumps. The Phase 3 cost is $849,000, which brings the total project cost to $1.19 million. And with that, we're recommending that the council authorize the mayor to sign the attached amendment to our agreement. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
How does this compare to what we were anticipating in terms of the overall cost of the project, the 1.19 total?
Right. In our 2018 wastewater treatment facility planning study that was completed, it identified the cost of this project as $1.13 million. So those are 2018 dollars. So if you inflate that to 2020 dollars, that's right at 1.2 million. So this is right in the ballpark of what we expected this project to cost.
So this is just a complete, it's just the cost associated with the phase that was planned for, and
That's
here
right.
we are.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Again, this project was broken up into three phases.
Right.
Right. And Phase 2 was that gravity pipeline, which was brought to council a few months ago. And then this is the actual pumps that we're replacing now.
And this will complete the project?
This will complete this project, yes.
You ready to be done with it, Jeff?
Yeah, we're excited to have it done.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
We've heard a lot about it.
That's right.
Yep.
I move to approve amendment number 1 to the contract documents for the City of Hutchinson, Kansas primary clarifier effluent pipeline project dated July 16, 2019, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8D, consider adoption of revised community events policy.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. You have before you a community event policy, which is essentially modifying the City Council Policy Number 8, which was formerly called the Special Events Permits and Fees. This is all the work of the legal staff aide, Linda Ojeda. And she handles this on a regular daily basis. And there were some changes that need to be made. Number one, there was always confusion over the name.
Yeah.
I mean, because we had the special events, permits, and fees, and then we had the special event in a designated entertainment district, where there are two special events. Is it a special event within a special event? So changing the name is very, very helpful. And so we've suggested that it be a community event policy. The others are simply updates, and I also want to mention, the fees are not changed. They are completely unchanged. The policy has been updated with some headings so you can find things by subject matter rather than just a pure outline form before. There are updates to the street closures so that folks in the area get notice of that before they are closed. The types of barricades that are available. There is some language in the special event and designated entertainment district that was updated. Some of that had to do with the change in the alcohol statutes about you can have cereal malt beverage, you can have beer up to 6% alcohol, and so some of those were modified to indicate that and to add an indemnity clause. But hopefully it's a user-friendly document, and we'd ask the council to approve that.
Are there comments or questions? I did have a few comments. Linda, I didn't realize you put this together, but it's so much easier to read. I like that you included the former policy as well so that we could compare it. I did have one concern, and that was the update to the language regarding the types of barricades required. I know Chief Hooper had discussed the need for having, I guess, safer barricades, the water-filled barricades on the streets instead of just the wooden ones. I was wondering how many of those the city is going to have available for events. It says a limited number. I just want to make sure we're not introducing any barrier, no pun intended, to all these community events that are popping up. And those are kind of expensive to rent if you don't have them, so.
Jeff Hooper, Chief of Police. I've had several conversations with the city, and we also agree with that. And we don't want to create any barriers, as you might say. Obviously, my concern is for public safety. Currently, the city doesn't own any feasible water barriers to utilize, but the sheriff's office and the police department share some of those, and those are the ones that we've been using. There is still some city costs associated with those when city crews have to transport those, and we have to fill them and obviously then transport them back. And so we're being very judicious when we decide to require those of an event. And generally speaking, I think the Landing on the Lawn event was a perfect example when we blocked off Plum Street, which is a major arterial roadway, and we're going to expect pedestrian traffic across that roadway and a significant amount of that. I think that safety of that event kind of overrode any of those other barriers there. But that we were able to get them up there, and that event went off without any issues. So
great. So we're not assessing.
What triggers the use, the type of barricade that you use?
Well, really, it's myself and my staff sitting down and looking at the event, looking at the roadways that are going to be blocked off, the number of people that are in that event, and making our recommendation as to that. But generally speaking, we look at if it's on a major roadway, any of the side streets, like when we do Third Thursday, right over here by George Pyle Park, those are events where I don't think we need those barriers. But if we're blocking off Main Street, or we're blocking off perhaps Avenue A or Plum Street or things like that, then we seriously look at having those hard barricades. Now, the Rod Run is a primary example of a major event that takes up a significant part of our downtown. We are putting hard barricades out at that event with the event organizers on the south end of that event as they approach from the south. They're doing hard barricades around the pit right over here when they do their burnouts, and they had already had the concrete barricades there just to protect the crowds in case a car would become out of control or things like that. And then we also have some hard barricades on that event on Avenue A, the west end of the event, over by Avenue A Park, to protect the crowds in those areas. But we've been working with event organizers on some alternatives as opposed to having to bring those barricades out. And for the Rod Run's a primary example of that. On some of those arterial streets coming onto Main Street, we're going to be parking basically vehicles or trucks there. They have some semis or large tractors that they bring in because they have bands come in or they have events come in. They're going to actually park those across the roadway, which we don't have to have hard barricades in
sure.
because they're going to do that. One of the things we did talk about was even the city crews, if in some events, we may be able to bring a dump truck out, and park it across the roadway because it's more feasible than setting up those hard barricades. But then also the aesthetics of having a dump truck in the middle of your festival may not be what the... So we're kind of looking at all those different options.
If it's a new one.
Right.
Sorry, Brian's going to say we need new ones all the time. They got to be in public.
Yeah.
The other issue there too is is to encourage, when we look at these events, it's not as easy as people think to block off Main Street or Plum Street.
No.
And so we encourage people to look at other alternatives, and in some cases there's not, but that is, and Chief's been really concerned about that, and we hear about things happening in other places, and we tend to think they won't happen here, but we've got a plan for that, and I think that's what Chief's brought to the table. But we're going to make it to where it's feasible. It's not a cost we're going to pass on, but Chief's going to make that determination as we look at each one of these individuals, as we do every time they come through. So,
Perfect. Thank you so
Good.
much. Are there additional comments, questions, or motion on this item?
I would move to approve staff's recommendation to adopt revised City Council Policy Number 8, including revised Hutchinson City Council Policy Number 8, community event fees, community event contact list, frequently asked questions, community event permit application checklist, and community event permit application.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dayline?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 9, report of city officials.
Start with you, Steve.
Okay. Not too many present to speak to, but for those who are watching now or will be watching, this weekend, Family Community Theater in association with Dillon Nature Center on Friday, and the zoo on Saturday are having a children's play. And so if I'm sure
That
there's
sounds fun.
folks
Yeah.
out there that have their kids involved, but I think it'd be a fun time if you're looking for something to do and want to see some youth of our community, and as well as then being in the venues of two of our fantastic parks here in the community. So Dillon Nature Center and the zoo. Enjoy.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, what about you, John?
No, I don't have anything.
No? Nancy?
No, nothing.
Okay, I just had a few items. I did want to send my condolences to the family and friends and the law enforcement community over Detective Coley's passing in the Reno County Sheriff's Department. I understand his funeral will be Friday at 10 at Trinity United Methodist Church. Many, many years of service to the county, not the city, but we're all one big law enforcement family, so that was a big loss. I did have a question as well about the convention center and where we stand, if there's any updates on that.
we are back in communication with the developer that we talked to and agreed that we would hold off until he returned to Kansas October 1 or the first week in October.
Is there anything we need to be doing to?
Well, there's a couple things, but we communicated with the task force that's been working on this that we agreed to go ahead and wait this out, and excited about continuing conversations with Leisure on the project, but it will not conversations with him will not resume until probably the second week in October.
Okay, great. So look forward to an update on that.
Yeah, it's front and center. Disappointing that we lost several months there, but I think the group decided that it was worth giving him the opportunity to put this thing together and move forward. In between time, we're having conversations about potential sites that we would offer, and we want to maybe do some of that ahead of October, so we're ready
That'd be
for that
great,
meeting.
yeah. Well, and if the meeting doesn't bear out like we hope, then we'll have that background information for our
Yeah.
next step. I
And-
just hope we stay on this
Yeah.
until we find a solution for our community. That's all I had, so. Do you have anything?
A couple of things. We have had now 2 parties interested in the purchase of the old fire station here at Avenue B and Walnut, right over here.
Really?
And so, we've got a city policy that's been around for some time, basically that has several steps in it. And one of those steps is that we determine that we own it, city attorney, city manager, we own it, we can sell it. We've made that determination. Step 2 is that the council would decide whether you do want to sell the building, and then if you do want to sell it, in what way? Privately, through a competitive bid, through an auction, several options there. And I don't expect a decision today. I think this is probably something we need to put on the agenda for formal consideration. But I want you to begin thinking about if, in fact, we do want to sell that, how do we want to sell it? Oftentimes, we look at a negotiated private sale based on the project. This is a really neat project. We think it's really could do well. We're going to negotiate with this individual and not open it up for a public process. But we do have 2 individuals that have contacted us about it. I can't speak for the validity of each of the projects, wouldn't be prepared to do that. But I think it's probably time we have that conversation. We've basically exited the building. We've pretty much got all of our stuff out of it.
Okay, you don't need it in
and
storage.
So
Okay.
there is, parts of that building to the rear that typically one of the individuals that looked at it would remove, basically the old jail area back there to the backside. So it's a neat building. It's not cheap for somebody to go in and do anything with, but I think our history in the community, we've sold all the old fire stations around town. You know where they're at. Have been sold for different reasons over the years. So, but
Well, I want to express my unwillingness to go the auction route because you never know what you're going to get there. And
Yeah.
we can have individuals outside of our community buy that property, not invest in it. I'd like to see people who have a vested interest in Hutchinson acquire it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will put this on the agenda, put together a little bit of a report about it, and then we can make that decision, and I'll let the individuals know that that's the process we're going through, and we'll decide then whether we, how you all want to go about selling that.
But both parties are intending to retain the majority of the structure?
Well, one party individual would remove all the back part. Is that the old, I think it's the old jail, and that it's not in very good condition, but retain the
Fire
structure, yeah.
Firehouse, fire structure itself. Yeah.
So,
And they aren't going to turn it into storage.
the 2 that I've talked to no, that's not what they
Okay.
would intend to do.
Okay.
But yeah, no. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
sure
think,
it'd be-
in the spirit of that conversation, I think it needs to be consistent somewhat with the city's long-term master plan for downtown redevelopment, and I think
Yeah.
emphasize the word redevelopment,
Yeah,
not
not-
a storage facility
Yeah.
or,
Yeah, I'm
warehouse
just
or
thinking,
whatever,
I'm
yeah.
thinking of the one across from Jackson's meat. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that's just storage.
storage.
You
Yeah,
know, so I
so,
don't want
I
it to
mean-
end
Yeah,
up
it's
that
a-
way.
to keep it live and viable.
Yeah,
and,
both of these are-
integral part
yeah.
of downtown, I think, is really important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both of these projects would not be in that category. I think the
Okay.
difficult part is how long, can the city, once you sell it, what
Yeah.
control do we have over
control do you
what the
have?
use of it is? And I think that, initially you can sell it to somebody based on this.
Yeah, and
And I
things
don't know contractually how that would look, but we would have to be careful when we look at that. But, we probably could make a difference in the initial purchase, but after that, then it's.
Yeah, no,
Somebody
I
sells it
realize
to somebody
that,
else, as
but-
long as it's within a proper zone, that would be probably out of our
Well, this has
control.
nothing to do with the fire station, but we have discussed over the budget process for several years in terms of an analysis of Memorial Hall and and the relationship of the fire station to Milwaukee. I mean, I don't know if that all fits together. And are we doing anything at all in that Memorial Hall, or
Not
really?
No, I mean, it's
Keeping the building
we're keeping it open.
Stable, yeah,
And it's
right.
being utilized for a few events each
But no
year.
active solicitation of
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't say that.
possible
We've
developers.
We've had some conversation with developers, but I mean, it's not an easy project to
Yeah.
develop, and
Right, I
and
understand
you know, we've had a couple very legit developers that have done some really good work in this community that still have their eye on that. But
Yeah.
one of them likes it and the other one doesn't, and so
I get you.
yeah. So we've had those conversations, and we'll entertain anybody. I know Jim and I have talked about that. Anytime we have a conversation with anybody, and you know, we had some developers way back when we were looking at the Wiley building that
Right.
were not only interested in that, but that building as well. But it's a real development challenge. Let's just say that. So.
Well, as long as we're talking about buildings, what's happening with the Landmark Hotel? Anything?
Nothing.
Okay.
And we do have issues there, and
Yeah.
Trent's in fact, we had a meeting yesterday about that. The backside on the alley there, on the west, I think it'd be northwest corner maybe. There's some brick that's starting to pull away, and so we're getting cost estimates on either to shore that up or to simply close that alley until something, and we're concerned about that. Closing the alley presents potential
Yeah,
problems.
there's a lot of other problems
But I'm not sure the city wants to spend $30,000 to shore up some brick on a building that we don't own.
We don't own, yeah.
Well, like any other property in the community, doesn't it fall under the IPMC?
Oh, yeah, yeah, but the owner is not doing anything. I mean, we can spend.
Have we sent violations?
Oh, yeah. And we're boarding I mean, all those windows have been boarded up. Most of them have been done by us, by the city. We have
By
a
the
contractor
city.
that does that. We're having that individual look at being able to maybe shore that up, and it's not going to be pretty, but those costs are ours until that building gets sold, but we've got an owner that really is not very active or interested. So, and unfortunately, we really want to kind of keep it together, because we have had some other developers that have been interested in that. We had a project a couple years ago, tax credit project. Unfortunately, it was the same year that the Wiley building.
That's right.
And it was senior housing. Manskys were part of that, and so we're going to explore some of those. But yeah, so we're working on that, trying to figure out how to shore that up. But that's the windows, we simply get those boarded up. Doesn't look good, but the fact that the building's starting to give is concern for people coming through that alley. So
Well, I'm not a fan of eminent domain at all. But at what point?
It has to be for public purposes.
Yeah, but if it becomes a public safety hazard,
yeah, unfortunately,
I guess then we would own it and we'd have to find something to do with it.
And you get into demolition.
Demolition.
Yeah, I tell you, the eminent domain laws changed that. I mean, you basically pay 3 or 4 times and so the person who owns it today that does nothing comes out of that smelling like a rose.
Yeah.
But
that's definitely not the outcome
we don't want that. It's still structurally pretty sound, I think, overall. That brick given away is the same thing that's happened on the Stevens building. That they received a $200,000 grant from the state to repoint all that.
Repoint all that.
On the backside, it looks great, and those monies would be available for that if we had a developer ready to go. And I think there's some real possibilities there.
Good.
So.
Good.
Anything else in? Quick.
Before
Yeah.
we move off the firehouse, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought at one point in time that was going to be a locus for our IT hub.
We did. We had talked about that, and Todd and where he's at now is good. That location over there, Todd's not here, but it's a big building. It was probably more than really what was needed.
So we didn't move that direction.
The only thing we've got over there is the towers up top, and we've already talked about either leaving those and that be part of the sale, that's a permanent easement, if you will. more than likely they'd be relocated. Todd's already given some thought to that.
Okay.
But it was a lot more building than what we really needed for IT, and I think, I don't want to say I talked him out of that, but we basically had a conversation,
Okay.
felt like where he was at would be a better use there, so, yeah.
Hmm.
So I think we've kind of moved on from that, yeah. It's good, glad you remembered that. The last thing I had, Orchard Park Trail, just, I know I put a little deal in the weekly report, and that project just seems to have like 20 lives, but, so we're ready, it's out to bid, and we're meeting with the county. We find out that 43rd bridge now is creating some problems because now they're raising it, and so the 43rd going back to the west is going to be raised, and so we're going to have a different look than what we have today. And so I think what our plan is to proceed with the bid, take the project all the way up to the one house there to the driveway, stop it there, and then we'll wait, because I don't really want to wait 18 months on this to see where that roadway ends up. So it's
not going to kill the project?
No.
Just
yeah,
require redesign?
Yeah. So that was, but nobody could control that. I mean, that's just, I think that bridge is, I think the county I read is another $1 million over what they thought because of the requirements of the railroad to, build the span bigger and elevate it higher. So
how is the signal working out on 30th Street? And
It's working great.
well, I've
Seal.
heard from superintendent a couple times that it's working well.
is there a
And I reminded him that's a temporary signal.
I was going to say, do we want to take bets on
Yeah.
whether they,
Because I will tell you, it is running a lot more smoothly than
Yeah.
it did before we had a signal there, even
Yeah.
without the bridge.
well, get that speed limit lowered, then we'll
John,
be exactly where we need to be.
But it is doing its job, I believe, and it's the bus
Is it?
traffic, they're able to make their, turning movements in and out, so.
yeah,
And
John, I think you'd have me along with you on the speed limit.
you better not. Better not try that with only 4.
Just takes 3 votes.
Oh, to be retired and be able to amble through the city at 25 miles per hour. Oh, is that all you had, John?
That's all I had, Mayor.
Is there a motion for adjournment?
So move.
second,
Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
yes.
Tyra Sticker
Yes.